Bidcorp has shrugged off the impact of the tough economic environment, delivering a 15% jump in revenue and headline earnings per share. This comes as it delivered growth across most of its businesses, with its European and South African markets being star performers. And joining me now is the company's CFO, David Cleasby. Thank you so much for your time, David. Now, another year on solid ground there. I mean, what were the biggest highlights for the business in this outperformance?
I think the whole result was pretty solid. So we think overall it's a very good highlight. I think there were some standout performances, as you mentioned. I think South Africa had a really impressive performance, particularly under the conditions and the general scenario that we were faced with for large parts of the year. I think Australasia did particularly well in the very tough conditions. New Zealand's in a recession, and Australia is also seeing very little economic growth. As you said, Europe overall performed fantastically, and they've just gone from strength to strength. And I think generally the world has been in a tough place. Consumer spending is down. The impact of high interest rates around the world is having, the desired impact, and that's reducing consumer spending. So I think almost every business has done fantastically. There are obviously some challenges, Greater China went a little bit backwards, but I think it's all okay in the circumstances and the broad economic environment there. So, overall, we're very proud and very happy with the result.
David, I want to zoom into some of those markets, and you mentioned South Africa. I mean, just with the trail of green shoots that we are starting to see now coming through, do the prospects look even better for Bidcorp in the country?
Well, I hope so. I think our businesses, tend to focus on the consumer, and the more disposable income the consumer can get, hopefully they'll spend that on eating out of home. And so, it all bodes well. We're not seeing anything just yet. It's still obviously tough. Our interest rates are up, but we're optimistic that, if interest rates do come off a little bit, and certainly the optimism around the political situation has increased significantly, and hopefully that will translate into consumer spending, and we'll be a beneficiary of that.
Within the emerging market space, you also mentioned China with a weaker trading there. What level of softness is filtering through to Bidcorp, and are there no signs of some sort of recovery there?
Well, I think the two things. The macro is down and consumer spending is down. Hong Kong's seen a mass exodus of tourism, and that's impacted the consumer spending there. So, we've had a management change that's been in place about a year now. So I think internally we're focusing on repositioning the business and putting that on the right path. So that's a positive. But, we do hope that the macro, although we've got a very small market share, the macro and the people need to start spending a bit more, and we'll be a beneficiary of that. So we're optimistic. We're not concerned about the business per se. It's still very profitable, but it is off, where it was previously. And, China really hasn't seen the bounce back from, post-COVID. And bearing in mind, they had a very hard lockdown and for a long time. So that hasn't happened. That bounce didn't happen like the rest of the world. But, we're hopeful in the medium term that things will get better.
David, it's also quite interesting to see that Bidcorp managed to get a solid result from Australasia. Of course, you talk about the headwinds there in the macro economy, and for a lot of companies that operate there, they don't really manage to kind of get above the waves when it comes to outperforming the economy. You talk about the fact that there was a moderation in revenue, but you did get a good trading result. Just contextualize that performance for Bidcorp in Australasia.
Well, Australia is obviously made up of two components, Australia and New Zealand. New Zealand, they are in recession. They have been in recession for a number of quarters. But notwithstanding that, although we didn't get great top-line growth in our business there, they've managed to focus on areas and capture, second margin in areas like manufacturing and that kind of thing. So I think, it's really testament to the management teams on the ground. They are flexible, they're adaptable, and they'll make do with the circumstances as they play out. And likewise in Australia, it's a fantastic business. They've got great reach into the market, and the management teams have done a fantastic job. Notwithstanding that, as what I said and you said, that the macro isn't great.
Yeah. Well, let's go into the UK. Are you starting to see a turnaround there?
The UK, from our perspective, had a softer first half and a much stronger second half. Some of that was we spent quite a lot of money investing in new facilities, and that comes at a cost. But I think, the cost base seems to be a little bit better, and we're getting that more under control. So, yes, the macro and the environment does seem to be getting a little more positive. And I think we're well positioned. We've taken on a lot of new contracts, and, a lot of these things sometimes take a bit of time to bed down. We've made some acquisitions there, and, some of these things do take time to get to their potential. We made another one in early July. So we're optimistic about the UK, and, we're optimistic about the potential for our business there.
All right. Well, we do have to wrap up the conversation. David, thank you so much for your time and giving us insights on the performance of Bidcorp in this reporting period, and also just zooming in on the specific markets as well. That was the CFO of Bidcorp, David Cleasby.